I am so excited to be here with you today, and I'm excited to be hosted by Visit Greenville, North Carolina, my friend Rachel Witten. I'm working in Greenville for the next month, so I'm excited to be able to use their space to record the podcast. But I'm also, this January is dry January, and so I'm very excited to welcome Kevin Morgan, who's the global head of Tempo Bay Hilton. He's a 28-year hospitality veteran with Hilton Hotels, who's worked his way through Hilton from the front desk agent to brand leadership as the global head of Tempo. Sorry about that. Tempo doesn't host meetings, but its bar experience influences how guests connect before and after events. And that's why Tempo's free-spirited program, which we're going to talk about today, offers such a powerful lessons for us as planners and hoteliers. So Kevin, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Tracy, thank you for having me. And an asterisk on that, we do host meetings. We have a couple of hotels with meeting spaces, but we can talk about in a little bit and how that relates to the programming of the hotel. But thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. I'm so excited when I saw this PR, this story that came out, and then I looked down and we have a mutual connection with your PR agent. So Amber. So I'm so excited. So take us back to the beginning. What problem were you trying to solve when you decided to bring in this free-spirited beverage program, and how is it going today?
It's a good question. If you look at how Hilton builds brands, right? And Tempo's new brand development when it launched in 2020.
And how many locations are there?
We currently have 5 that are open, and we're about to open number 6, 7, and 8 here within the next 60 days or so. So we have a number of locations online, but when we build new brands, we wrap around the consumer. So we take all this marketing research, reams and reams of marketing data, and we look at that and we say, okay, given the space that sits out there, what white space exists within the product set of, all the hotels that exist, and what we know about that individual consumer, what decisions are we going to make in order to build the brands and that's going to meet sort of those customer needs? And Tempo was one of those hotel brands that sort of sat in this lifestyle light space. We have the lifestyle hotels, you have the focus service hotels that sat underneath, and there was this gap that was in between. And we found the consumer and we said, okay, what's most important to them? And in doing all of this research and launching it in January of 2020, what was interesting is that you sort of had this like perfect storm of the industry and everything that was happening, right? You had COVID that hit us, and all of us realized that health was extremely important that we had kind of put on the back burner. Tempo was already building a product based on that consumer that was already leaning towards that. And so by sort of having that come together, it really was about saying like, okay, we've got this customer. We know there's a duality with them. They like to go, 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 go. When they stop, they want to have sort of this wellness and this power down and all of these moments. They want healthy and indulgent. In fact, we built a guest muses. So our brand targets who we call Mark and Maya. Mark and Maya, very specific attribute. I could tell you specific. They drive a Volkswagen or a Tesla. They wear Warby Parker glasses. They have a Shinola watch. They drink Sierra Nevada beer. They go on ski vacations. They play basketball. They have a Peloton in their room. They go to SoulCycle on the weekend. On and on and on and on.
Wow.
About this specific consumer. And we say, okay, well, if we know this about this customer, if we do nothing with it, it's worthless. And so what we did is we took a step back and we said, okay, well, we know Mark and Maya like to have a burger and fries. They're going to feel guilty about it. So they'll have avocado toast in the morning and get on the Peloton. They'll have a salad at lunch. They'll feel better about themselves. They're going to have 5 cocktails at night and start that yo-yo all over again. So we had to build a product that offered both the healthy and the indulgent, the power up, the power down. And the free-spirited cocktail was one of those things of where the consumer told us is we zebra stripe. And this was a completely new term to me in the concept of rotating between the type of drinks that they have. They typically have an alcoholic drink, they have a non-alcoholic drink, they have an alcohol, non-alcoholic, and they're rotating in between. But 9 times out of 10, it was, well, I have an alcoholic drink and then maybe I'll have a glass of wine or I'll have a Diet Coke or a glass of water or a Diet Coke or something like that, and then I'll go back. And so what we looked at is from the consumer set, this emerging non-alcoholic, free-spirited sort of vertical that was starting to emerge. And COVID accelerated that.
Right.
COVID pushed that forward at a velocity that was not even and it was all of it. It was everything from I work out, I meditate, I spend time with my family and my kids, all of this accelerated. And so when we built out the menu itself, we started with this idea of, okay, well, the duality of the power up, the healthy, and the indulgent, you're going to have to build it. But we're not going to do it like the traditional industry does when you go to order a non-alcoholic drink at your typical hotel, and all they do is take the alcohol out. And it's probably some fruit punch type of drink that is very disappointing.
Right.
What we looked at is we said, okay, how do you replicate the flavor profile, the smell, the look, the garnishes that go into it? And then how do you make it operationally efficient? Because it all comes down to, can you do this at an affordable price point?
Right. Yeah. Well, and that affordable price point and that for the person who's going to buy it, as well as something that's going to make you money at the same time. We have to look at it from both perspectives of that. And I mean, and just going back to, something that, I've been given in South Carolina, in Myrtle Beach, I was given here's our mocktail. And it was literally cheer wine with Fresca. I'm like, that is a soda. That is not a non-alcoholic mocktail, right? And so it really, I'm glad that you're looking at it from that perspective, because it really does need to elevate it. And go ahead.
It's and that's exactly why we're partnering with Derek Brown. The guy is the wizard of mixology, quote unquote, the wizard of mixology. And he has really looked at what ingredients go into it. So you're not getting the Fresca and the soda water that go along with it. You're getting actual ingredients that replicate real drinks.
Right. Yeah. And I've got his recipe book. I was going to say cookbook, but I've got his drink book, and I'm like, it's got aquafaba in it. And, it's not just, putting some ginger beer in something with some, it's a much more elevated experience. So what kind of drinks have you concocted from that?
It runs the range of, we've got, really kitschy names for all of them. Thank you, our marketing teams, for building all that out. But it's looking at and saying okay, how do we replicate to our hotels and provide them with a number of potential options for the consumer, right? We give them all 10 different variations of it. Mm-hmm. My favorite is Sage Against the Machine. The reason why it's my favorite is because of one of the ingredients that's in it, and it's delicious, to say the least. And then they all have a choice of which 5 they want to put on their menu based on regional appropriate, where they're at. On top of that, we also do limited time offers. So we're looking at, in the springtime, what is most appropriate for us to roll out to sort of to all the hotels that is a spring level drink, and maybe have something to do with we include Red Bull with it, or we do something related to a hotel opening. And so we have an entire calendar that we've built around working with the hotels to say, okay, what are those limited time offers going to be in addition to the 10 different drinks that exist on that menu?
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to see if I can do this. We have somebody commented on here. Wonderful. I still find it strange that restaurants are slow to offer zero alcohol wine and beer, not just cocktails. Have you also, working with Derek, have you incorporated that as well?
Yeah, we've looked at it, but the primary push right now for us is we want a free-spirited cocktail, right? There's a lot of things, we can go out and try to be everything to everyone. Mm-hmm. From Tempo's perspective, it is about the cocktail side. The reason that there is an issue with the hotels, the bars, the restaurants adopting sort of the non-alcoholic, in our personal opinion, if you think about it holistically, is because it comes down to staff training. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's buy-in, and it's a level of understanding of the value associated with that team, seeing that they're creating a better experience for the person sitting in front of them. And their traditional mindset is that I give out this soda water and this fizzy drink, and I create a disappointing experience. Mm-hmm. And by building out a menu that is just a little bit more robust, it has the better ingredients inside of it, you're standing up something where a conversation can be had with said bartender and the person sitting in front of them. Or they can tell a little bit about that non-alcoholic beer that's sitting there, about where it came and what's the history of it, how was it brewed. And so there's that piece. So it really comes down to our F&B managers and those folks leading F&B, training the staff and empowering them with talking points and conversation dialogue that helps drive that. And that's what's absent.
Especially when you talk about the catering side of the business, right? I mean, because your bartenders are typically serving staff. They're not a bartender like Derek Brown, right? And with that kind of training. And I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. And in this day and age too, are you finding it challenging to find those bartenders or that staff that wants to do that? Or are they on board?
No, here's the thing is F&B is very difficult to operate. Like it's a very difficult space, right? It's complex. It's, there's a demanding customer that sits on the other side oftentimes. And what we've found is how do you connect it to what the value of that individual is? Mm-hmm. Value to them is being able to have a conversation with someone, being able to delight that person sitting in front of them. And ultimately, there's some financial compensation with tips around it, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that bartender may think if I serve a spirit-free cocktail, free-spirited cocktail, something without alcohol in it, I'm going to get less tips. So I'm not motivated to do that.
Right.
Building out a program that mirrors spirited and free-spirited has the ingredients that are so valuable from let me explain to you what Nogave is. Mm-hmm. Agave is this concoction that Derek helped us build. It takes a special kind of sugar, some honey, and it mimics the viscosity and that earthy sweetness of agave, and takes into consideration the sustainability piece, because guess what? Agave nectar is highly processed and it's unsustainable. And so now, if that bartender can have the conversation about do you want to know a little bit about this Nogave? And then that creates a conversation. Well, how does compensation work at a bar? It's when a customer is delighted about their experience. Well, how are they delighted about it? They are sort of involved in an experience with either the person that's sitting in front of them or the cocktail that's in front of them in their hand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm going to relate that to food, because there was the Outback Steakhouse at the Orlando airport, and I was ordering food. And I'm asking about allergens and whatever. And the bartender, I was sitting at the bar and she's like, okay, well, you can't have this. You can't have this. You go ahead and eat this and da-da-da-da. I tipped her the price that I paid for my food because of the fact that this is, and not to discount bartenders, but she knew the food and she was proud of that. I'm like, and so that to me is going to relate to the same thing of one of your bartenders giving me a drink and telling me about it.
Yeah, I mean, this world is based around incentives.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how do we incent the team members? We give them a good product and we educate them on that product so that they can speak to that guest that's sitting in front of them.
Okay, so I want to jump back to the education thing, but take it a higher level. So food and beverage managers, right? Or beverage managers at your properties. How are you relaying it to them? Are they on board? Are they seeing the opportunity? What did it take? Because I can tell you, I've met a bunch of food and beverage directors that are like, no, we don't serve that stuff, right? So did you have that experience? How is it going?
So, when we first launched this in 2023, we had three hotels at the time. As we started to gear up and ramp up the hotels, we literally said, you know what? If we're going to launch this with Derek and we're going to be good stewards of it, leaning in with Drink Company and really doing this right, all of these food and beverage managers and directors to Nashville. We're going to bring all of our partners and Liars and Pathfinder and all of these folks in. And we're going to have a summit meeting where we first articulate the strategy for the year, which was let's really lean in with this new menu update that we're making. Let's lean in on free spirited and spirited cocktail menu in the mirror and how they go side by side. And spent an entire day doing drink tastings, explaining the products within it, having those partners explain what's unique about their products to those beverage managers. And at the end of the 2-day session that we did with them, they were all on board with, okay, we finally understand why this is important. And we understand how the duality of this goes with power up, power down, healthy and indulgent, free spirited and spirited cocktails, and how that meets the consumer. Because at the beginning of the meeting, I gave them a rundown of who the Tempo guest is that was coming through the door. What's crazy about it, 25% of all the cocktails that are being sold at Tempos right now are free spirited.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. So you're making bank on those drinks.
Yeah, I mean, it actually is something where it's like everybody is starting to come to the light is starting to shine on it to say that, listen, this is not a program that is a trend. We're approaching it in a format where this is something that's going to be ongoing. It's going to last the test of time. And in order to do that, somebody's got to put a stake in the ground. Somebody's got to find out what the expectations are, and somebody has to do it the proper way. Because Tempo has 5 hotels, soon to be 8, in new brand development.
Right.
I've got the ability to do innovative things like saying, here's how the program is going to be completely defined out. Here's how we're going to execute it. Here are the resources associated with it. There's a gentleman on our team, Kevin Quinn, who runs our F&B for Tempo. Guy's a genius. And so he's built out the recipe cards. He's built out the protocols with how to execute this. There's batch cocktails. There's the 2 steps with the garnish. There's all of this to make it easy to execute. So now bring the folks into Nashville, educate them on the brand and who's walking through the door, why it's important to them, educate them on the actual product itself, have our folks over at Pathfinder come up, stand in the room. He's from Brooklyn. You can totally tell he's from Brooklyn. He's got this unique hat on. He's got a vest that's like branded and all Pathfinder stuff. It's like, which one of these doesn't look like the other in the room? And like, you can tell he's from Brooklyn, explaining about his product. Now we've put all the pieces together for execution.
That's awesome. And I love the fact that you brought the brands in there too, so that they could hear from those people and probably the stories behind why they created it, right? And to help them then sell it and get that, because it's that buy-in, that personal buy-in helps the people who are selling it sell it better.
Yeah, I mean, there's in the stories and it was both the free-spirited folks and the spirit. We had folks from the spirited realm there, and they were just explaining to the nth degree about individual products. Now, is everybody to remember everything about all those products? No, but they will remember unique things, and it will spark their interest. And what was kind of funny is the general manager of that hotel joined us that day. And he's like, I was in Whole Foods the other day and I got the Pathfinder and I didn't realize that it was going to be in our new cocktails, and it is delicious. And so you're starting to see it sort of come full circle and this penetration happening with these products.
Well, and then also just kind of going back to that 25% sale. I mean, that's a big jump, from not selling them to you've now got 20% of those drinks are being sold. And it kind of going back to that zebra conversation too. I mean, at one of my events, we were doing athletic beer, and this guy came up and said, I know I'm going to be up until 2:00 in the morning, networking or hanging out with my customers. So I'm going to balance it out. I'm going to have a regular beer, and then I'm going to have an athletic, and then I'm going to have a regular, or water, mixing it up. And so I was grateful that we had that. And it's because I think the statistic is that like 30% of people do not drink, or they stop after the first drink. And so you're giving them the ability to still maintain that type of drink that they were having, but not without the alcohol.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because Derek is frequently, when he started to position like the importance of the free spirited cocktails, I remember the meeting. Amber was there with me, and we were at the Hilton McLean here in Tyson's, where our headquarters is at. And we were having lunch over at Hearth, and we were sitting down talking to Derek about everything he's doing in the space. And he started talking about this idea of bars are social connection areas, right? They're like the hub of like where people socially connect. and interact with one another. Your issue is that, there's a large percentage, 70% of the population that may or may not have an alcoholic drink, and there's 30% that does not, which means that you have a pretty heavy amount of folks that are not being able to engage in that ecosystem of social connection with others because they don't drink and they feel like they're left out. And so by creating something that, is as simple as putting the cocktails side by side to one another, and you can't tell the difference between if this is spirited or free spirited. And sometimes you may not be able to tell the difference in taste very much. Like they both feel about the same. You're now making it an environment where somebody doesn't feel peer pressure, and they're going to avoid going to wherever that social activation is happening, whether it's a meeting or it's a bar itself.
Well, and I want to jump to one of the favorite details that I read about that too, is that you're distinguishing them with the coasters, right? Yeah. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when we first rolled out the program, we were trying to figure out a way of how do you denote spirited, free spirited. And it was like, well, maybe could you put like the two straws in the free spirited and, not in the other. And that would be how you denote it. And it just wasn't really resonating, and there was still some confusion around it. So we started with coasters that had spirited and free spirited on them that would be put out. And it wasn't enough of this was a clear delineation sort of explaining like the difference between the two. So we ended up saying, well, let's make it a two-sided coaster. One side is, black with spirited. The other side is white with free spirited, branded in Moonsong, which is our F&B product. Okay. And that way, when it's served on the coaster, that individual knows that, okay, I got a free spirited cocktail. But it goes one step further than that. It goes to this concept of silent service that Kevin always explains to me. The other Kevin always explains to me. Is this idea is if the cocktail is sitting on that coaster and it has free spirited, and the bartender comes around and they say, would you like another one? If that coaster is there to denote spirited or free spirited, they know exactly what to order, and they don't have to call that out because it could create an awkward conversation. And then for a number of reasons, why a person chooses not to drink alcohol, it's none of our business, and it doesn't matter. We just need to know, how do we do it in a way that is sort of is inclusive and doesn't create a space where like you're gonna create it so they don't want to come down and have a cocktail. Right. Because we want that revenue. We want them to come in that front door. And that's how you do it, is you take the friction point out.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. And the silent knowing is really, really important, because if you have a dietary need or whatever, you don't want to be pointed out by that server and have a long conversation explaining it, and or a long conversation with the people next to you that you're entertaining and saying, well, why don't you drink? It takes that, I don't want to say embarrassment, but it takes that personal piece of you away from the conversation, because you don't want to have that conversation.
And it, that is the net benefit. Let's be honest, is like, okay, that is a symptom or a result of what we're doing is we're not causing that conversation to happen. We have a capitalistic mindset associated with this. We want them in the bar buying drinks. So to get them in the bar buying the drinks, we know that's the psychological point at which they say no. If we remove that, then it fixes also that problem, but it also gets us revenue.
Right. Exactly. And that should be from a meeting planner's perspective and from a hotel's perspective. I don't want that to be the end result. That's the end result benefit from it, but you're providing that safe experience that we want to come back to. And I think, as a meeting planner, I'm like, am I going to come, or as a meeting attendee, am I going to come back to that meeting because they didn't serve me well? If it was a really bad experience, probably not. So you're helping with that. And as Derek had said, and you kind of pitched on or mentioned as well, alcohol is that catalyst for social connection. And did your team, and reframing that inclusion at the bar, change how your team thought about being in shared spaces? Did they have that kind of aha moment in that as well?
Yes, but there's like you almost have to go further back in the funnel.
Okay.
So when we built the brand itself, we knew that this specific guest that was coming through the front door had a coffee shop tendency. They wanted to be in open spaces. They wanted to be in social environments for either to be social with other people or to be socially alone, meaning they wanted to be around people, they just didn't want anybody to talk to them. Right? So you had an individual. And so we immediately knew that in a traditional hotel, sometimes it's like the restaurant's down this hallway, the meeting space is down that other hallway, and it's all divided up. And so what we said with Tempo is we're going to knock all the walls down. So we have flexible and informal meeting space that's, adjacent on the window wall. We've got the bar and the cafe that's on the opposite wall that backs to the kitchen. And then all of this space within the actual building itself is all open. Why? Because people want to be around other people. It's the lifestyle consumer. So a lifestyle traveler tells us that they much rather prefer to come down to that public space and either be social or work down there. Go to some of like our focus service brands, those consumers are going up to their guest rooms, right? But when you're in the lifestyle full service space, you're getting a little bit more social out of it. So by knocking all of those walls down, we've now created an environment that they want to come down and be in. The next step to that is looking at how do you execute on something that's going to be conducive for them to actually stay once they're down there. And so we looked at something that we call vignetting. So lifestyle hotels, always designed forward, very trendy. We piloted this with Temple Raleigh. So if you go to Temple Raleigh's website, you can see their pages within their lobby, and you'll see this, how it came to life is creating living room style vignettes. So different seating types that are scattered throughout the lobby so that people come down there and they want to be there. The next layer on that is looking at seating height. The lower the seating is, the less likely you are to interrupt someone or sit with someone you do not know. The higher the seating type, the more likely you are to join somebody at that you do not know. Like you'll notice that like a high table in a restaurant, there are people there that don't know each other and are willing to interact. As the seating lowers, if it's like a couch with a coffee table, you are less likely to sit down with them.
Really? Oh, that's so interesting.
Psychological. Proven. Psychological.
Wow.
So when you're designing meeting spaces or designing public spaces, you have to look at how does your seating space vary to create conversation. And you even have to go a layer further to say, if I want to drive flow of traffic, where am I putting that seating height at? Specifically where it's scattered throughout the lobby, throughout the meeting space, throughout the pre-function space, to drive people to have conversations with one another. Because if you put low seating up front, people walk in, it's going to be a little bit off-putting because they're like, well, there's a whole bunch of people having these intimate conversations.
Right.
And maybe you want them to walk past and go further in. And so looking at that is something that's important. And we did that with Tempo to say, like, how do we stagger the seating, place the seating in vignettes, and sort of lay things out. But I mean, have you ever been to a restaurant where you've seen that? Where you've seen people at a higher table sitting together?
Yeah.
And people at the lower table not.
I was walking by I don't even know where I was the other day. I guess it was Nashville. And outside this restaurant had really low couches. And I'm like, I would never go sit on those couches because they were super low to the ground. I'm like, it was too cold to do it anyways. But I'm like, just seemed odd. But that kind of makes sense because they were trying to create that really close knit experience for, when they're open and having those people sit there.
Yeah, people will walk by. They will see people having intimate conversations, they're toying, laughing, conversing. And vis-a-vis, it sort of creates a different vibe than if you had taller tables that were lining the front of the actual building itself.
Right. Interesting. Wow. Okay. So because we're talking about table heights and everything, how do you incorporate accessibility into that? And I know this is taking us, so I mean, free spirited also just talks about accessibility and what we're drinking, but your guests that, have physical access, getting into those different vignettes, how does that work?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So if you look at the bars themselves, we've deliberately made it so that the cutouts are not like down over in like a forgotten space,
Thank
right?
you.
They're like over in like the center. It may split between where the cafe is and where the bar is. Well, guess what? There's an added benefit to having a lower table height in the center of the actual bar area from a serving perspective, right? During the daytime when it's cafe and it's not bar. At nighttime, when it turns to bar, then that space is more conducive for accessibility. As you go further out into the actual lobby space, by having the couches that are a little bit lower level with the coffee table, you're good there.
Yeah.
And then by having the other seating types that are situated around, the banquettes that may be on the backside of the wall of where those couches are at. And then even as you go into the flexible meeting space, there's just, the lower tables that are associated with it. And then making sure that there's flow. Can you get between those?
Right.
Because lifestyle hotels are notorious for density of furniture. That's what makes a hotel very much feel lifestyle, is a heavy, dense, furnitured space that is warm, inviting, and feels residential.
Mm-hmm. But I always jump to this one conference that I attended, which was about inclusion, and there's no way that anybody who utilizes a wheelchair could have gotten into that room. I'm like, we're having this conversation, but you're also not you're not thinking through the space, which you guys have clearly thought through the space concept and using that data of Mark and Maya, right?
Yes.
But also the fact that you're looking at different table heights and how that impacts the room design, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, it's not like other folks in the industry haven't done it, right? It's the same thing like with our guest rooms, right? In the guest room itself, we've took a wall that's neighboring where the bathroom is at. We shift it over. We create what's called a get ready zone there. And that get ready zone is 14 inches wider. Well, that 14 inches makes the room feel bigger and makes that space usable.
Interesting.
We're not the first to do it. We're first to program it. So it's at all hotels. Same thing goes for public space downstairs is being deliberate about what you're choosing to do and not to do at the brand level impacts sort of how that brand is positioned in the perception of it by guests as a whole. Right? You can do it in one-off, but you're not going to get it across the board.
Okay, so we're getting off of the conversation of beverages a little bit, but I'm really kind of interested in that brand perspective because a while ago I was talking allergies to a chef, and he's like, "Well, we're never gonna because it's mostly franchise." But I like the fact that you're building this in, and I don't know if it's Tempo franchise or is it corporate?
Yeah, they're franchise. I mean, Hilton is a franchising engine.
Okay. So that it's built into the brand. So this is what it's part of their brand standards for this to happen and incorporate that in so that hopefully when you're going to the 8 different tempos, you're getting that same experience, even though you're in Raleigh or New York or whatever other city.
Here's the interesting thing about it is that in new brand development, right, we choose to grow organically with the exception of a couple of acquisitions that we made for very strategic reasons. But we choose to build brands from the ground up because we don't want the sins of somebody else's decision. 9 times out of 10, when brands, concepts are being built, there is a lot of the best idea around the boardroom table, right? I've got this great idea. An individual gets latched onto it. That becomes something that they are willing to die on the sword with. And it's the most difficult part of managing brands is detaching yourself from the guest research, right? And taking a step back and saying that. But in building out brands and the standards around it, we also crowdsource. So the guest rooms inside of our hotels are like version number 42.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's the 42nd revision of that guest room. Now, it was 38 by the time we got to our first hotel opening. But that came through the crowdsourcing of asking owners, asking hotels, asking GMs what their thoughts were on whatever we're working on. Right. So every time I go into a hotel, I make it a point to try and talk to every person on the floor when I arrive. It takes me an hour and a half to get to my room in New York. because
oh wow,
not many people are on the floor. But you're asking questions around like what's working, what's not working, how are things going. Asking them how their kid's soccer game was the last time we were there, and I was talking to them about it, like that type of stuff. And that's where we get the best ideas from. Then we take it back to the brand itself. We decide, can we tweak this? Is it going to be affordable? Is it going to be operationally achievable? Or is our product and innovation team gonna get mad at me for suggesting this? And then roll that out. And these are all things that either the guest told us about, the owner told us about, or a hotel team member sort of brought to our attention.
Well, and I like, because you've got the three different people. You've got the ownership team, the person who's servicing the room, and then the person that is utilizing the room. Because I like to say, hey, when I go check out, I'm like, oh, by the way, this wasn't working, right? Because it's not like your cleaning team is housekeeping team is checking every single one of those things, right? In the usage of it in every single day. So thank you for including that guest experience in that conversation. I want to take it a little bit back to the beverage portion now. And you're saying, is it feasible to make it work? And that's not what you actually said, the words you said, but I want to talk about obtaining the non-alcoholic spirits, and or if you're using non-alcoholic spirits or different ingredients there, because non-alcoholic beverages they're not sold in the liquor stores, right? Then like the spiritless brand, etc. Some of them are, but how are your team sourcing those products? Is it through the Cisco's? Is it through US Foods? How are you doing that and making it feasible for everybody to maintain these products?
So here's how we think about it is first person through the wall is going to get, a bloody lip, right? And so we are the first person through the wall at this point in time to like push in that direction. That also means that some of these ingredients are a little more difficult to get than the other ones. I've challenged the food and beverage teams to say that, listen, across all of these cocktails and all of these menus that we're producing, we need to think about it in two ways. Reduction of waste, right? And Kevin actually you already brought that up around like, listen, this is not from a sustainability perspective. If we're throwing out food, it's waste. So let's go talk to the hotels. Let's talk to the, our Hallmark bartenders, our ambassador bartenders, and have a conversation with what are the things that are selling, what are the things that are not selling, and why are they not selling, and remove them from the menu, alter them on the menu. We're just completely eliminating. Same thing comes with, from the cocktail side of things, is understanding which ones are moving, looking at that data, and then looking at the ingredients inside of it to say, like, are all of these truly sourceable? That's why the agave thing came to life. That we make that at the hotel. And so it's looking at it through that lens to say, okay, what are the things that are actually moving? What are they not? Do they turn into waste? And then trying to get it to the point of sourcing, because we've been working with our partners around this to say that, some of these things need to be easier to source. And it's working with either the ABC down the street that, they can actually get some of that stuff. It's working through the other partners and making sure that nobody's going to Amazon to order this stuff.
Right.
And it will be and continues to be something that we will perfect and get right, because we can't do this at, Tempo's supposed to have 500 to 1,000 hotels.
Oh, wow.
Rolling out a program like this in 10 hotels is super easy. Rolling out a program like this in 100 hotels with that problem will be we will fix it by the time we get there.
Yeah, I mean, because from New York to Raleigh, just using those two hotels as an example, I'm like, the liquor, the laws are different in every one of those states and how you procure them, even though these are non-alcoholic, but it's still like, where do you find them? Like, I'm having to buy them online and have them shipped. Yeah. We go direct through the manufacturer, but yeah.
Yeah. And in that whole space is very, like, I'm a brand guy. I came out through operations. I'm a front office guy through and through. So when you talk to the food and beverage teams about this, and, they talk about the brand marketing, the beverage marketing fund. So in partnership with some of the folks that we work with, there's some joint funds that are available. When you do marketing with alcohol-based companies, there are laws and regulations you have to comply by. When you do marketing in the free spirited space, you don't have to. And so now you can do something really, really neat, very innovative, and not have that issue of what law am I going to break if I do this? And how do I facilitate this from happening? Because last thing we want to do is create any ruckus or any headaches for these hotels. We want to do what's right.
Yeah.
So that's the neat thing about it. But
yeah, and I just remember Spiritless actually was in an event. They sponsored an event that I was attending, and they actually ended up having to send in their RTDs ready to drink, pre-mixed ones versus the bottles, because it was in New York. They were like, where do we source? I mean, the hotel was having a problem with but it's non-alcoholic, people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get there. I mean, right now we don't have an issue with any of that. Gotcha. Sourcing any of the stuff, there is no issue. We've got great partners. We've got a great supply chain. Hilton Supply Management's doing a great job for us. I just want to make sure that when this starts to get to scale, when we get to the 25, 50 hotels, that this thing is a well-oiled machine, because in the franchising business, everything has to be a well-oiled machine. And that's the good news of working with, with folks that are on our F&B teams, is they're brilliant. And they know how to do this. The turnkey stuff, whether it's batch or the two-step, whether it's the recipe cards, it's how the prep line is sort of situated, what's good, the ingredients going in, using cross ingredients so that, the runoff from the hummus is used in the foam of the espresso martini. And how do you reusing this stuff helps make it from an efficient, sustainable side of things. So
yeah, and and I'm thinking you're saying the aquafaba, which is the liquid from the chickpea can, so that you're using that in your drink, since So yeah, that's smart. I mean, it's using the whole pig in an essence, right? Using all the ingredients that you've got in front of you. So okay, now I'm going to say, are you going to now then go turn this into all the other Hiltons as well?
We've done a lot of testing, right?
Okay.
When we roll this out, we test this over at the Hilton next door to our office, and we test this on a number of Canopy locations and a couple of Curios. Right. And what we found is not even us that's going to roll it out. Like, if you look at trends in the industry, if you go out and Google free spirit or non-alcoholic trends, you'll see that there is no choice. The industry is going this direction. It is a tried and true. That's what's happening. And so what will happen, though, is that we're going to have to get really very prescriptive about who is doing what, who owns what,
right?
How those recipes work. There'll be cocktails that are shared across the portfolio of hotels. I get inquiries all the time about various things that we've done in Tempo, and it's the value of being a new brand is being able to innovate. Right. I have the other brands asking about our gym, and how do we approach that? Well, we talked to some Anytime Fitness Center owners and talked about what were the key elements that they put in that space. Same thing goes for the cocktail menu.
Awesome. Okay, so a little bit about your beverage program too, or not your beverage program, your food program, because you partnered with Bluestone Lane and it's kind of tying back into that waste, about fresh ingredients and reduced waste. How are you talk about the sustainability aspect on there and operational goals? And, one of my friends from Atlanta, when they went to culinary school, is like, here's your carrot, you're chopping it into perfect squares and everything else goes into the trash. His philosophy has completely changed, but how is that, the F&B teams looking at that?
They're looking at the complex matrix of ingredients.
Yeah.
What's being cross-utilized? How does that utilization sort of flow into the other things that exist, right? Like, for example, the berries that we use in the morning and the yogurt parfait, right? Today, they are great. Tomorrow, they are still great, but they are still one-day-old berries. Those one-day-old berries go into the berry smoothie after one day of being out.
Okay.
Now they've transitioned, and sort of we think about that. Well, we got that from, something around Bluestone talking about how do you take and make the most of these ingredients? One-day-old berries are not bad. One-day-old berries are not the freshest as in currant berries, so we can cycle them through to a different place. Aquafaba is a great example of that too, is looking at how do those ingredients, but it's looking at the prep line and saying, okay, which of these ingredients go in the other ingredients? Mm-hmm. Which of these ingredients are being sort of utilized from what's being ordered off the menu? And then how do we build an entire like system around optimizing that and constantly going back to the hotels to say like, what is moving, what is not moving, what is not moving because you can't get a hold of it. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have it on your menu anyways. And so we can take that off. What's going bad? What products are expiring quicker than we expected? In looking at it from an entire ecosystem perspective. And that's the great thing about having, strong F&B internally is I've got an army of experts that are helping us make a decision around like, how do we approach this?
And then they're taking that, like based on that meeting, they're taking that back because it's also a change in philosophy in the kitchens themselves and your line cooks and everything like that. And teaching them that, no, that doesn't go in the waste. That's going to go to compost or that's going to go be reutilized. It's a different mindset.
Yeah. I mean, we've recently on the third version of the Tempo prototype. So we're on 3.0 now. We took about 15,000 square feet out of the building. We took 15,000 square feet out of the building was because there was some dead spaces. There was some incremental space in the actual guest room itself that we believed could come out. It was about 2 feet on each of the guest rooms. We tested it, actually physically did time and motion studies, brought customers into the room themselves and tested. Made some tweaks and changes to the actual guest room itself, made some tweaks and changes to the public space downstairs, completely had to re-engineer that kitchen. In the process of re-engineering that kitchen, we took the feedback from the hotels to say, like, what were some of the things that we noticed out of the gate that we needed to change and update. And so it comes down to learning about, how do things sort of flow on that prep line? What needs to go on the storages? How much cold storage do we need? All of that. Mm-hmm. So it's very complex, but.
And you're using a lot more fresh ingredients than you are prepackaged, like heated up in not a microwave, but heated up in a professional heater.
Yeah, I mean, they're all fresh ingredients. Okay. So that's the one thing about Bluestone Lane. So when we first had a conversation at Bluestone Lane, it was during the middle of it was April 2020, dead center of the pandemic. And the F&B guy that supported us at the time lived in New York City above Bluestone Lane. He asked me, have you heard of this Bluestone Lane? I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. The world's shut down right now, but keep going. He said, they have a line out the door right now. And it's the middle of the pandemic and they are just moving and there are people that are just like socially connecting there, being responsible about it and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And so he said, well, you should come up and take a look at it. I said, well, I'll message the founder and the owner of Bluestone Lane just to let him know, hey, we're going to come up and take a look at your operations. If you're around, we'd love to sit down with you. He later told me he thought it was a joke. He was like, why is Hilton reaching out to me?
Wow.
And so we sat down with them in their restaurants, probably it was about June of 2020, after my 14-day grace period when I was in New York to be, quarantined, or I could go out on the streets. But, sat down with him and had a conversation with him about like, how do you operationally execute this menu and what are the things that are right? And it was all down to like using fresh ingredients because that's what that consumer wanted. Mm-hmm. And then we started looking at like their design target, even like who tagged them in their Instagram photos and stuff like that. And we're like, we literally have the same exact customer. And that's how that relationship came to light is like, well, why don't you help us with our menu? And then we'll put Bluestone Lanes in the tempos where it makes sense. Mm-hmm. And those Bluestone Lanes, can be a license for you and everybody wins.
Wow.
So that's sort of where it came from is looking at Bluestone, plant forward menu, fresh ingredients that are colorful and all sorts of all of that the guests and the customers want.
Nice.
There's burger and potato wedges on the menu also for that want to indulge, but it is a very plant forward menu.
Nice. Is there one in the Raleigh hotel?
No, Raleigh's based on where Raleigh's at, how that F&B is situated, we could put a Bluestone in there. Okay. Nashville has one.
Okay.
Tempo Savannah is opening on March 12th.
Okay.
We'll have one. And then there's Washington, D.C., which is going to open in mid-April. We'll have one.
Okay.
And so we have a number of these coming online. But the Moonsong product, the brand F&B product, is a diet version of Bluestone Lane, since Nick and his team helped us sort of build that out.
Okay.
And the full Bluestones are in a location appropriate areas. Nashville downtown has a Bluestone Lane, and it is like gangbusters.
I have to go. I'm going to producing an event in Nashville in May, so I will have to go and stop by. And I live 2 hours from the Raleigh one, so I'll go check that one out too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a couple of random rapid fire questions for you.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay. Spirited or free-spirited for you personally?
Free-spirited all the way.
Okay. What's one ingredient you're excited about right now behind the bar?
I talked about this before. It's that no agave syrup. I am so excited about that syrup. I just think that the DIY hybrid component associated with it, what Derek has done and helping build that out, looking at like how it feels in your mouth and what are just using wellness ingredients is fantastic. And it leans into what Tempo is, because Tempo, we're not a wellness brand, but if you look at the sum of all of our parts, we offer wellness options for a traveler if they're seeking that. That makes sense.
That does make sense.
One piece of that.
Okay, so actually some tangent questions that just pop into my head, because you did say sugar is being used, right? In that no agave. Okay, is that vegan sugar?
It's I'd have to ask Amber this question. I don't know. It's Demerara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to go into why sugar is not vegan, because that'll gross some people out. But coffee meeting or cocktail hour connection?
100% coffee meeting.
Okay. See, I don't drink coffee, so I'm going to be the opposite. But I'm up early in the morning. One word you want guests to feel when they're at a Tempo bar?
Heard. I want them to feel heard. I want them to, when we built out the brand, we set out to minimize this disruption of travel. Which is this whole idea of like when you travel, like your world's flipped upside down. You maybe your gym routine's off.
You're 100%.
You're not eating as healthy as you are. And we looked at things like, what's the reason why like a traveler may not work out in the morning? Right? They may not work out because they have workout shoes. Well, why don't they have workout shoes? Well, maybe they had to bring their hairdryer with them. We put Parlex hairdryers in our guest rooms.
Wow.
Because when you're at the bar itself, is that like, I don't want to drink, but I want something that's interesting and creates an experience around it. Well,
right.
I have a free-spirited cocktail that's got some Lyres in it or some Pathfinder, and it's delicious.
Okay, actually, and then I want to give you another recipe. There's a store or a restaurant here in New Bern, in New Bern, North Carolina, called What's Up Doc.
Okay.
And it is carrot juice with some jalapeno and celery. It is my favorite drink. They make it alcoholic and non-alcoholic. I can introduce you to the chef.
Would love to. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Carrot juice?
Yeah. I know.
What's Up Doc is called the drink, or is that the restaurant?
What's Up Doc is called the drink. The restaurant is called Cypress Hall.
Okay. I feel like I've heard that before.
Yeah, it's very yummy. And I mean, they don't have it all year long because sourcing fresh carrots and stuff, but yeah, it's delicious. Okay. And before I ask you my last rapid fire question, I do want to go back to something you said at the very beginning. You do have meeting space. So talk a little bit about that meeting space so planners know. And is this beverage menu and all these menus being incorporated into your meeting space?
100%. It is. We have a full menu program that's being built out right now. It's almost completed. That will roll out to the hotels. The hotels are already doing it anyways. We're just going to wrap some structure around it, make it a little bit easier for them. But like, for example, Nashville has 11,000 square feet of meeting space.
Oh, okay.
So,
nice.
We have, Raleigh, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 square feet of meeting space.
Okay.
And all the other hotels that exist out there is, ranging from 600 square feet to 2,000, all the way on up from that. So the locations that don't have formal meeting space still have areas of the lobby that have been carved out that are boardroom style tables.
Okay.
They can do 15, 16, 18 people. And then like informal meeting space that could be used as pre-function area.
Okay. All right, cool. Awesome. All right. My last rapid fire question. Finish this sentence. Every meal or, because we're talking about beverages, beverage should
not make you feel guilty about your choice.
Nice. I like it.
Yes. And that means fresh ingredients, thoughtful programming around it, all of that. And if you do feel guilty about it, we've got a gym you can go work at it.
Nice. Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much for spending time with me. And we've actually been here for an hour. So I really appreciate you giving me 60 minutes of your time today, or a little bit more than that. It's really appreciated. How do people find you? How do people find out more about Tempo by Hilton?
You can go to our website, of course, or you can catch me on LinkedIn. Occasionally I'll log in there and check things out, or you can email me at kevin.morgan@hilton.com. Okay. Happy to have a conversation with anyone.
Okay, awesome. All right. And then Amber just piped in here. It said, most Demerara sugar is vegan because it's an unrefined cane sugar with large golden crystals, naturally avoiding the bone char, animal bone charcoal, used to whiten some refined sugar. So Amber, thank you for being on the mark there. Appreciate it.
I count on Amber. She's amazing.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in today. I'm so excited to have talked to Kevin Morgan, group brand leader for Tempo by Hilton. I hope I got that right, about inclusive bar design. So thank you for your time.
Tracy, thank you for having me, and have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you. You too. Everybody, until next week, stay safe and eat well. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.